Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Seeley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the December 11th, 2019 meeting of the Brighton Town Board. Thank you for coming out tonight if you're here in the room, and thank you if you decided to stay home on this chilly evening. We thank you for watching us, either streaming live from the town's webpage or watching us on Spectrum Cable Channel 1303. However you join us, we want you to be with us as completely as we are. If you're here in the room, you can get tonight's agenda and all of the supporting materials on the back table. If you are watching us remotely, all of that same material, all the material we're going to be referring to tonight during the course of the meeting is available on the Town of Brighton webpage, townofbrighton.org, so feel free to follow along. And feel free to do more than follow along. We will be inviting you shortly to participate in our open forum, where people have the opportunity to address the board about any matter, whether or not it is on the agenda this evening. We'll be getting to that in a minute. But first, I want to start with a pledge to the flag, ask everybody to rise if they can, and ask Christine Corrado to lead us tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just a couple quick housekeeping announcements. If you hear the town hall emergency alarm system activated, you'll want to leave the room and leave the building immediately, either through the door to my right, marked with the exit sign. If you take that door, turn right, go down the stairs, out the back door of Town Hall and away from the building. Or you can take either of the two double doors in the back of this room, through the lobby, out the front door of Town Hall, down the steps, and again, away from the building. We never expect that to happen, but just in case. And speaking of just in case, if you are watching us on Spectrum Cable 1303 and you're watching the live broadcast tonight, if you experience any technical difficulties, either with the audio or the video, you can call Spectrum to report that. Please call them at 756-5000. That's 756-5000. And I also want to introduce our ASL interpreters tonight, Susan Pence and Alexandra Fowey. Thank you both very much for helping us communicate with our community. Before we start with the open forum, though, tonight, we are going to have a couple of presentations. And I do want to get to that in a minute. But before we do, 2 weeks ago today, the day before Thanksgiving, Brighton suffered a tragedy, a true tragedy, in the pedestrian accident on Edgewood Avenue. We grieve for the families of the two people that were killed in that accident, Mila Rangzwana and Elmira Hall. And we pray for the recovery of Evan Rangzwana, who was also injured in that accident. I'm grateful for the work, for the response of all the first responders who were on the scene that day. Our Brighton Police Department, our Brighton Volunteer Ambulance, our Brighton Fire Department, all of whom work every day for our safety. But on that day, on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, responded to the kind of call that no one ever wants to experience. I do want to let the community know the Brighton Police Department is continuing what I know is a very thorough investigation of the accident and the circumstances surrounding the accident. It is very important that that investigation be carried out. This isn't CSI, where those investigations are done in an hour and they get wrapped up neatly. This is a multi-agency investigation, and so I want to encourage everybody to please be patient, respect the families as this investigation continues. And before we go any further, I would like to ask for a moment of silence in memory of Mila and Elmira. Thank you. We do have two presentations tonight before we start the open forum. The first one is an update for the community on the inclusion and diversity work that we are doing as a town. Earlier this year, the town board appointed members to the IDEA board, the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Advisory Board, because we consider inclusion and diversity to be core values here in Brighton. The diversity of our community in so many different ways is one of the greatest strengths of Brighton as a community. After the establishment of the board, we retained Gwen, Inc. as our consultant, and you'll be hearing in just a moment from the president of Gwen, Inc., Gwen Weber McLeod. But I also want to note a couple of the important participants and really leaders in that work. One is my good friend, former town board member, and my special assistant, special advisor, rather, for matters of diversity, Sheila Gaddis. Thank you for all you do, Sheila. Thank you for being here tonight. Councilmember Robin Wilt is the town board's liaison to the IDEA board. And both Robin and Sheila have been working very closely with the board, and thank you for that, Robin. Felicia Garcia Hartstein is the chair of the IDEA board. Felicia could not be here tonight, but it is a significant undertaking, and I appreciate the important role that Felicia is playing in this important project. I want to introduce then Gwen Weber McLeod. Gwen is here with the rest of her team, and I will introduce Gwen. She will have the opportunity to update the community. She's got a PowerPoint on the work of the IDEA board and what we can expect going forward. So I think those of us up here, we will go back into the audience so we can see the PowerPoint behind us.
Great.
Welcome, Gwen.
Well, thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here, and I'll let you situate yourselves before I get into this. Yep, that's fine. That's perfect for me. Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. I am so excited and honored to be here as part of this project, to be introduced to residents and members of the town board here in the town of Brighton. My name is Gwen Weber McLeod, and I am the president and CEO of a private sector leadership development corporation that's based in Auburn, New York. However, my clients are all over the country. And my company is incorporated in my name, Gwen Inc. In my business, we specialize in working with leaders and leadership teams across the country and helping them do an array of services that enable them to leverage their leadership towards driving the outcomes of their respective organizations or companies, or a lot of our clients are also government-related entities. And in the case of the town of Brighton, one of the reasons that we responded to the RFP, because the area of expertise in my company is working with organizations that want to strategically demonstrate commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of their work. So when the town of Brighton issued this RFP, my team, Judy Dixon here is the director of our client and contract management, and my consulting partner, Kathy Adams, decided that we wanted to respond because we felt that the set of skills that we have in our company would be in alignment with what the town of Brighton is attempting to do. We want to commend you for taking this step. Not only do we believe that it's a really good, if I could use this language, town strategy for the business of doing the work, but there's something else going on that I think it's really important for all communities to be thinking about, because as we're doing our work, it's always very future-oriented. And one of the things that we keep an eye on is trend data. And a piece of trend data that's really inspiring a lot of what we do is that it's being projected that as communities are raising up and pushing into the world new generations of people to work in the workforce, it's being estimated that over the next 5 to 10 years, that up to 75% of the workforce is going to be millennial, women, and people of color. And those folks are coming out of communities just like yours. So what I'm discovering, and we have a point of view, is that when a community sees it as part of its work to create an environment that enables the full diversity of the community, the populations that are here, to be active participants, and also because you're in the business of delivering service, doing it in a way that gives lift to the people who work, live, and learn here, good for you. The other thing that I would offer for your consideration in preparation for doing this work, that we really just tried to reach out and do a study of what other towns like yours were involved in this, and we found very, very few other communities taking on, at the town level, the creation of a specific plan to guide their decision-making about how do we really want to go about demonstrating our commitment to diversity and inclusion. So one of the things that I would say is I think that you're being very leading edge in doing this. With that said, I think your town's going on a journey. And an analogy that I will sometimes use in my work is it's often like we're riding a bicycle and building it at the same time when we're stepping into this particular type of work. So we are really excited to have the opportunity to be the consultants that will support you through that process. The reason for our presentation tonight is at a very high level to share with you what we've been engaged to do. So Kathy, if you want to do that. So our contract engages us to engage in these 4 specific activities, and I'm giving them to you at the very highest level. But we've been engaged to facilitate the meetings, to design and facilitate in partnership with Felicia, who is the chair, and members of what we're calling the Idea Board Project Steering Committee, which includes Town Supervisor Melee, Sheila Gaddison, Robin Wilt, and Felicia. We are the ones that are designing and facilitating the actual activities of this group. The other thing that we will do as the project unfolds is we will provide training. And that training will be informed by the goals and strategies that surface in your plan that will be coming from this group. But there's also a level of training that we would define as leadership training. Because when a community decides that they really want to leverage diversity and inclusion and equity as a way to help them achieve their outcomes, it's also important for those charged with leading those initiatives to show up as leaders in a very specific way. We are working with task 3, which is actually the development of the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Plan. And I would offer for your consideration that we see this as the heartbeat of this work. It's the centerpiece of our engagement. And we are doing that by designing a process that the Idea Board will be moving into to actually identify what are the strategic priorities for the town of Brighton as it relates to this subject matter. In my company, we're talking about a strategic priority as what are those things that you as a town must do to be able to consistently act on a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Will also include specific goals, strategies, and then it will be incumbent on the town staff in partnership with members of the Idea Board to generate annual work plans for that. One of the things that I will say to you is we are aware that you have an overarching plan for the town, and as this document is created, we'll also be encouraging the integration of this work with the other work that you're doing. And another piece of this is that at some point in the project, we will also, with direction from the town supervisor and his team, start to take a look at some town operations policies in regard to inclusion, diversity, and equity best practices. Because the minute you publicly state that you have commitment to this, it also creates the opportunity, and frankly, I think the need, for the town to make sure that the way it conducts its business is not an obstacle to achieving your goal of being a town that has the ability to engage all of your community in the work in ways that are appropriate, and also provide services in a way that are inviting, welcoming, and value added. You can go to the next slide, Kathy. As of today, this is where we are in our project. There are 20 very diverse members from your community who were invited to interview to be part of and to serve on the IDEA board. We've held 4 meetings to date, and the nature of those meetings included that the introductory meeting was really about us just getting to know each other, introducing ourselves to all of them, and kind of just getting on common ground about what the nature and the spirit of this project is. We also started inviting them by sharing information. We shared some of the other plans that we were able to discover, just some information about building a preliminary framework. So we talked in part about the process that we typically use, that we will adjust as needed to meet the board's needs, but also to give them a sense of what other communities that have made the decision to do this work have been thinking about it as well. And we started to do just some brainstorming with them, just based on your experience of being a resident here and interacting with town government. What are some things that you think that the town should be taking into consideration as we're moving in the direction of this plan? Moving into 2020, our next formal meeting with the IDEA board will be that we've invited the town supervisor in to have a conversation with members of the IDEA board. And the purpose of that is to clarify intent, to clarify roles and responsibilities, to clarify what this town is looking for in terms of this plan, and to engage in those conversations that enable a group of people who are working together on this type of initiative to develop the kind of trust that will be required so that we can always have open, honest conversations, make sure that there's feedback loops. And again, I think for us as consultants, helping people recognize that since this plan will belong to the town, that the way that we're doing about the work is really going to be in alignment with what you need to have as outcomes. And the other thing that we're starting to do as well is beginning preparation for community engagement. We believe that the spirit of this project really requires high levels and high touches with the residents of your community. Because often when we're the ones developing the strategy, generating the vision, we may have a point of view about what the town needs to do to act on its commitment about diversity and inclusion that often is in alignment with what residents have to say, but sometimes isn't. And this is a really critical piece and will be as we move forward to generating the information that the IDEA board can use to vet their own ideas and perspectives about this and to invite more input. And we will be using a very specific way of getting at that, which is a model called the World Cafe that really allows for lots of information and engagement and can be done with large numbers of people. What I'd like to do next would be to invite my colleague Kathy Adams in to just kind of talk you through this mind map. And it gives you a sense of how we're at this point projecting that we will move through this project. And then if there's some time left, my company style is we're always open to your questions, comments, concerns, and we even take respectful criticism if you have some for us. So Kathy, if you'd be willing to come up.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Gwen. Good evening, everyone. So as Gwen mentioned, this is a mind map. If you're not used to looking at this kind of image, the idea of a mind map is that you have a central premise or purpose for what the map is all about. That's depicted in the white block in the center. And then around that center activity, in this particular case, are process steps. So starting in the upper left-hand corner, I've got 4 items in a canary yellow, And beginning with, and these particular steps show the meetings that we've had so far. So I've numbered them as meetings, which as I move through this will be a little less relevant. But as Gwen said, on the first meeting, we spent some time introducing one another, we needed the members of the board to get to know us, we wanted to get to know them, and for them to get to know each other. At that meeting also, Bill spent some time talking about how his vision for the process is, sort of launching the process. And as Gwen mentioned, we'll be inviting Bill back now that everybody's gotten a little bit used to working together, and that we have more open communication because we're all comfortable with one another. Bill will come back and we'll talk about some of the more practical steps as we move forward. We've basically asked the idea board to think about, from their perspective, what are some of the strategic priorities that the town should consider in developing a plan. And we have a list of those, and shortly we'll be posting those on a dedicated web page connected to the town's website. But that represents the views thus far of those 20 people. So shortly we'll be inviting the community at large to participate in the World Cafe process that Gwen mentioned, which is a wonderful, very easy way of getting as many people who want to participate to have their views incorporated into this. Because if our fundamental premise is inclusion, then we want to include as many people as possible so that as we move toward building a plan, all of the views that want to be expressed from town members can be incorporated in some fashion, and that will be very central to the work of this board. So as we move into the blue stages, you'll see that the idea board will be working in January and February on the plans for that process. We'll be staging that process, we expect, in the first quarter. And once we have all of that input, we'll then begin to work on the plan. Once we have a plan framework that everyone is agreeing to, that will give us a firm foundation from which we can begin to look at the policies and procedures and begin to draft the document. So even though these still have numbers, you can see that as we move forward, the work will become more complex, and there will be a lot of legwork to get all of the ideas consolidated. There'll be writing tasks. So it's difficult to predict at this point exactly how long each of these steps will take. But as we move counterclockwise through the blue steps toward the review of policies and procedures, preparing a final draft, and then presenting all of the final work to the town board and moving it through the process of considering that from an adoption perspective, and then at some point the project from our perspective will close. So that's how we see the process rolling out. When we joined the idea board, we envisioned it might take a year. That's kind of a plus or minus idea, but we are so pleased to be on board. We're really enjoying our work with the idea board. It truly is a diverse and interesting group of people, and we hope very much that many more will join us on the World Cafe project, piece of the project, and we'll have lots of input from as many members of the town as want to raise their voices. So, Gwen, back to you. I can stay here.
So I guess, just, again, I invite you all to come back to your seats because we truly are open to your questions, comments, or any concerns that you might have. But the other thing that I'd like to offer up for consideration is although this project is being driven by 20 residents who have agreed to do this work, I certainly want to say to the town board and your senior staff that as this unfolds, there'll be opportunities for us to engage with you as well. And a core philosophy in our company is that everything rises and falls on leadership. So even though the idea board will be the generators of this document, in the end, the document will belong collectively to the town supervisor and all of you. So one of the things that we would invite you to do and can offer some support about is at some point to also include a conversation about, well, what is the role of our town board as we're looking to operationalize the various components of this plan. And typically the kinds of things that we are encouraging leaders to begin thinking about is, how do we show up as ambassadors for this work throughout the process? You know, what role do we actually have in helping the community understand why this is important? Because where there are two or more people, there's divergent thinking, and I suspect that there are people all across the continuum in the town of Brighton about whether or not this is important and why you would invest in this. So I always want to say that successful diversity initiatives, leadership is inextricable from you really leveraging this plan and making this investment work for you. So while we're in the process of doing this work, I just inspire and invite all of you who lead here to start also having that conversation about what is our responsibility to the plan, because the idea board are the creators, will be doing that initial work, we'll be vetting it, you know, with the town, with town residents, but also with you. But in the end, like any other plan you have here, how that gets integrated into the day-to-day operations of your work will be really incumbent upon how you all decide to position this into the overarching goals that you have. And finally, one of the things that really inspired us was when we looked at your mission, vision, values, and read Supervisor Melee's remarks. There's already a lot of evidence that you're a community that believes this and is doing the work. So this, in our opinion, is not a good to great initiative for the town of Brighton. We think it's a great to greater. And my final thought about this is it's my observation that when organizations or communities to try take this on, when you do this well, you literally are enhancing and in some cases changing the trajectory of generations of families that will choose to come here and live. And the more you can position your community to be even increasingly known as a community that's welcoming to all of you, it adds value to you, because organizations that do this well, towns that do this well, are doing it because it's the right thing to do from an ethics societal point of view. And also because sometimes there's mandates that require us to think about not being discriminatory in some ways. People are also looking at it, to be honest with you, because of the bottom line. The more you can attract people to your community, that also has a positive effect on the kinds of revenue that you can generate to support the lives of these people. And the other reason people tend to do this work is because they truly believe that none of us is smarter than all of us. And I'm observing more that my clients who are at government entities are really increasingly wanting to engage diverse populations of people and helping them think strategically about what are those things we must do to ensure that every resident feels comfortable living in our community and can contribute, and how do we deliver service in a way that adds value to their lives. So this will be an interesting journey. We'll be pedaling right along with the idea board, but we are really commend you on having the courage to take up this work, and we're very honored that we are the consultants that were selected to support you in doing it. So thank you very much for having us. And of course, we are open to any questions, dependent upon how many seconds there's left. I know you have other things to talk about tonight.
We do, Gwen, but few of them are as important as this is for the long-term future and success of Brighton. I hope you have seen tonight what we have all seen as we've been beginning this process of the inspirational nature of the leadership that Gwen is providing for us, and how quickly she has really captured some of the important, I'm not even sure what the right word is, but the things that we do, we try to do almost a second nature. The emphasis on community outreach for years, that has been core, that has been central to how Brighton does business as a community. The imperative that this plan, like our other plans, most recently our comprehensive plan that Gwen also referenced, cannot be a plan that sits on the shelf. It is a live plan. It is a plan that guides us, whether it's that comprehensive plan that is our land use and community planning document, or this plan, which is our inclusion and diversity plan that is the model to take us from great to greater. And that's an inspiring message, and I really appreciate your presentation tonight. And we'll ask if anyone has any questions, whether you are up here with us, or if anybody in the audience or our senior staff, anybody has any questions tonight for Gwen. Well then, thank you all for coming out, and I know I'm looking forward to this sometimes challenging but no doubt inspiring process.
Exactly, and my contact information is actually on that slide, but Bridget is in contact with us all the time. So I know that sometimes as leaders we need to marinate in something, right? So I want to let you know that if anything comes up from any of you as we're doing this work, we are always available to you and very, very responsive. We're here on a monthly basis. And as we're moving along, we can, part of it is technical assistance and leadership consultation. If something's going on in your head, your heart, or your gut about your leadership responsibility to this, please don't hesitate to be in touch with us. We're committed to your success, and we're committed to making sure that this does for your town exactly what you want it to do. So thank you very much for having us, and enjoy the holiday season.
Thank you. You too, Gwen. Okay. Our second presentation tonight is also very important and very timely, and it also concerns what I consider to be one of Brighton's core values, education. Tonight we have Neve McDade Clay. Neve is a junior at Brighton High School, and she is here tonight representing the community group Fight for Brighton. And Fight for Brighton is an organization that has, a grassroots organization that has been advocating for fair funding for the Brighton Central School District. In doing so, it has been working with a number of organizations, both education-related and other organizations that are engaged throughout the community. So starting a new year and starting again a new effort to make sure that in 2020, Brighton Central Schools, and Brighton Central Schools, what we're really talking about is the students, the educators of the Brighton community, to make sure that they have the resources to do the job at the level of excellence and to learn at the level of excellence that we have been able to do in Brighton for so many years. So I'll stop talking. Neve, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
You're not using the screen, are you?
No.
Okay, good. Then we'll stay here.
Thank you. My name is Neve McDade Clay, and I am a junior at Brighton High School. I am here tonight as a representative of Fight for Brighton, a community organization representing more than 1,200 Brighton families dedicated to achieving funding equity for the Brighton Central School District. On December 3rd, Fight for Brighton testified at the New York State Senate's Joint Standing Committee on Education at a public hearing in New York City. The hearing was focused on examining the distribution of the foundation aid formula to school districts across New York State. Brighton currently receives just 50% of the funding that the foundation aid formula calculates is actually due to Brighton. Brighton's low level of funding puts it in the bottom 2% of all New York State districts, and the second lowest in all of Western and upstate New York. In 2017, former Majority Leader Morelli and Senator Robach secured additional aid for Brighton, but that was intended as a permanent fix for Brighton in 2017, and was overwritten and almost completely undone in 2018. It is as if the aid never happened. Today, Brighton is facing a fiscal cliff. Without change, the district will be forced to terminate whole programs and dozens of positions. The most impacted students will be those benefiting from programs that are not legally mandated. Fight for Brighton is asking its town leaders and all community members to advocate for Brighton schools and act now. A letter writing campaign to Governor Cuomo, New York State Senate President and Majority Leader Stuart Cousins, and New York State Assembly Speaker Heastie is underway through Friday, December 20th. I have letters with me tonight, right here, or you can download the letters from Fight for Brighton's Facebook page. Pop-up letter stations will be at French Road Elementary School Thursday, December 12th, and Wednesday, December 18th from 6:30 to 8 p.m., and at 12 Corners Middle School on Monday, December 16th, and Tuesday, December 17th, also from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Finally, Fight for Brighton will also have a letter table at the farmers market this weekend. We urge the community and our leaders to write and fight for Brighton. Thank you very much. I'd now like to open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Neve. I'll just, not a question, but I will just note that at this morning's Brighton Chamber of Commerce Board meeting, there was also discussion of Fight for Brighton. The Brighton Chamber of Commerce is going to make a financial donation towards the work that you're doing. Stamps aren't free. And also supports the work, and I certainly anticipate that board members from the chamber will be involved, as I hope that those of us sitting up here at the table will be in letter writing and the other work that we can do to support our students and our school district. So is there anyone else with questions or comments for Neve or anybody else on the Fight for Brighton team that's here tonight? This is really important. 2017 was a great year. We really thought we had moved the needle. You rightly all felt very good about your accomplishments. Unfortunately, what you see is how easily almost any financial commitments in Albany can be overturned. And that's a challenge that gets graver and graver as time passes and as the disparity. And by the way, I really do think it's important. I use the word disparity advisedly because we just finished talking about the diversity of our community and how important that diversity is. And yes, we know in some people's minds there's a perception of Brighton as a very wealthy community, and we do have wealthy families here in Brighton. But that diversity, which is racial, which is faith, is also socioeconomic. And we have many families here in Brighton whose children are getting free or reduced price lunches, are getting other important benefits to make sure that they are able to succeed as well. So this is not money going to a wealthy community. We know there are other communities, particularly the Rochester City School District, that also need to make sure that they are getting sufficient aid and they are using it wisely. But I think we've seen this year, we've seen the impact just this year of the fact that the original budget, although it got a majority, did not pass. There are many school clubs and other activities that are no longer operating because they don't have faculty advisors, because funding for those faculty advisors is no longer there. We passed a budget, but we should never forget the fact that even in passing that budget, there were losses, and those losses could amplify tremendously if we are not treated fairly in statewide funding. So thank you, Neve, and thank you, Fight for Brighton. I don't know if you have copies of the letters you can leave with us, and we will incorporate into the record of the meeting. Perfect. good. And maybe if you can give them, especially to the town clerk, we will make sure they are included in the record of the meeting. Again, any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
To what extent is Fight for Brighton working with like Fight for Rochester and other Alliance for Quality Education groups that are also working to address the foundation aid shortage?
So what's important to understand is that there are a bunch of...
You might have to get a little closer to the mic because this is going out on TV.
So we're one group of many groups across the state who are fighting for equitable funding. And dependent upon what kind of a school district you are, sort of is dependent upon, I think, the groups that you tend to align yourself with. We have, because we're such a small grassroots organization, there are 5 of us on the executive committee doing a lot of work. We haven't been able to align ourselves with many larger groups just because of manpower alone. But it's important to recognize that we don't see foundation aid funding as a cookie that we need to take from someone else to put into our schools. That we see all of the boats as needing to rise. We need more education funding across the state. We know that the foundation aid formula takes into account some of the things that you were mentioning, Mr. Maley, about inequities among students and diversity of needs among students, relative wealth of communities. So when we are looking at that percentage provided to a school district, getting 50% is 50% of what the state believes is owed to us. And when we look at the city who, I mean, my heart is bleeding for the city right now. They get about 80 to 89% of their foundation aid funding, and that's not enough for them either.
Thank you. That, you know, the issue of adequate state funding is a critical one, and it's a critical one as well for municipalities. And yes, there are things that we can and need to be doing organically here at this level. We need to make sure that we are continuing to be hospitable to smart development and particularly redevelopment in our community so that we can build our tax base. So that we can be a community that can support as well as possible education and other municipal needs. But we can't do that with one hand tied behind our back. And right now, our school, Brighton Central School District, is fighting with one hand tied behind its back. So I hope we can all join in and make sure there are many voices, many people working for the district and for this community.
I think it's also important to recognize that it used to be, the perception used to be that suburban districts could make up for funding shortages through their own tax base, and that inequity between a suburban district and a rural or an urban district whose funding sources in terms of a tax base aren't the same, that no longer exists. And so that's sort of a false comparison in a lot of ways. We cannot make up for funding the way we could 20 or 30 years ago through our local tax base, not just because it doesn't exist, but because we cannot.
Yeah, you can't make up a 50% gap internally.
We can't because of the tax cap.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the tax cap is somewhat the elephant in the room.
Sure. So thank you. Sorry.
Thank
If you have
you.
any other questions, though, you can find us online, and we're happy to engage.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board and the community during our open forum? Josh?
Thank you. My name is Josh Barth. I'm the county legislator for District 24. That encompasses pretty much north central Brighton and southeast Rochester. So I have both this city and portions of Brighton that I represent. I just like to come in occasionally to provide reports on what the county legislature has been up to.
What has the county legislature been up to?
A lot of things.
A lot of people are asking that question.
Yeah, and it's important stuff. We actually met just the other night on Tuesday, and we passed a $1.3 billion budget that was passed without any amendments, and it was by a vote of 17 to 12, and that was in fact along party lines. It has the hallmarks of what you would expect from past budgets, so nothing has really changed. So in terms of funding for various youth services and child protective services, those things have stayed either approximately the same or declined somewhat, but it's moved around. It's very complicated. But the values behind it haven't changed, and so myself at least, I'll speak for myself, I did not vote for this budget. The other thing that happened in the meeting was we had about 31 public speakers, which is a lot. If you think about, there was other events going on that night with the Rochester City School District, that 31 people felt, called to talk to the county legislature. And primarily, they were talking about a local law that was passed and signed last week, I believe, that I have heard referred to as the annoyance law. And it's something that I find to be, frankly, indefensible. And hopefully with the new administration and with the new county legislature as well, it's a new county legislature, it will hopefully be repealed next year. The sooner the better as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of people spoke about that. But I do want to point out that there were several speakers, youth speakers, who came to talk about the need for a climate action plan. And that is also something that's going to be reintroduced at the county level next year, early next year. And I look forward to seeing that happen as well. Beyond that, we're looking forward to having a sound trite, but I really mean it. We're looking for the opportunity to have a bipartisan approach to governance, because with a majority in the county legislature belonging to one party and a county executive belonging to another party, to get anything done, they have to work together. And that is a good thing. And so it's my hope that moving forward next year, that will in fact happen. Now, I can't control that, but I'll do whatever I can to make that happen. So that is actually my report. If there are any questions about other issues that are out there, perhaps about the Cable Act that was offered and then withdrawn, we can talk about that, or anything regarding anything about the county level, I'll be happy to talk about.
Thanks, Josh. Does anybody have any questions? I would just mention that today I had the opportunity to be on Evan Dawson's Connections radio show on WXXI AM, and the subject was the so-called annoyance law. My colleague, Supervisor Seeley from Irondequoit, along with Irondequoit Police Chief Tantello, was there. Greece Police Chief Patrick Phelan, and John Baines, a county legislator-elect and former local judge and longtime teacher who represents a district in Parrington and East Rochester, discussed the law. And, my views, and the chief, he and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, and Dave, feel free to chime in with your own thoughts. But what I can tell you, and what we have publicly discussed, is the fact that both the chief and I are opposed to this law for a number of reasons. Legal, the legal underpinnings of the law are so clearly suspect. It will absolutely fail. I have no doubt that it will fail when it's challenged. And as I said today on the radio, I hope we don't have to get to that point. It's not trite, Josh, to think that people can work in a bipartisan manner together. And I do hope that before parties feel that there is no choice but to litigate. I hope that somehow cooler heads, wiser heads will prevail. You know, we heard from the county executive's office the thought, well, we thought that law enforcement wanted this. We thought that this was going to help law enforcement. In fact, overwhelmingly, whether it's our chief, whether it's the county sheriff, other chiefs, Chief Tantello today, this is not a law that law enforcement, and I'm focusing on the police, but it's really first responders. We're talking fire, we're talking ambulance. The concept of annoying a police officer as being potentially subjecting you to a year in jail and a $5,000 fine. 6-year-olds annoy their mothers and fathers by rolling their eyes. Is rolling their eyes of the public going to constitute annoyance in
the very
somebody's
same thing
eyes?
in the legislature.
So from a legal perspective, but from a policy perspective, you've heard us, you've heard me, you've heard Chief Henderson before Chief Cathaldi, you heard Chief Vocal before Chief Henderson talk about community policing. And community policing is at the core of our law enforcement policy and philosophy here in Brighton. If the people of this community or of any other community don't feel like they can work with the police department, and we know, frankly, in some communities, that is a bigger issue. It's a very big issue in many communities, including, but not limited to, many communities of color. If some 29-person legislature and a county executive sign a law that puts up another barrier between the police and the community, because that's what this law does, it frankly has the effect of intimidating and preventing members of the community from interacting with the police department, and that is the exact opposite of what we need today. You look at Ferguson, you look at the events that led up to Ferguson, the community divide that was endemic in that community and in other communities. This law does not address that, to the extent that there are concerns, whether it's for safety of law enforcement or their ability to do the job. Nobody seriously challenges that there are already laws on the books. But the suggestion that rolling your eyes or swearing at a police officer, I don't want to condone anybody swearing at a police officer, giving a police officer the finger, or taking pictures of police officers doing their job, which is absolutely clearly our right. And yes, I imagine sometimes that annoys people, but that's our right. And we are lucky to have a great police department with a great leader like Dave Cathaldi. But the fact that we have that doesn't mean that we have to support this law, and I don't, and the chief doesn't. I don't know, Dave, if there's anything else you want to say on that point, but I'll stop talking.
No, I think you've said it very well. I mean, this is, and I think the sheriff said it very well, this is a solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist, and I'm going to speak solely for Brighton. The culture in Brighton is community policing, and when I came here 21 years ago, it was community policing under Tom Vocal. Mark Henderson took it to another level, and I'm trying to do the same. I've been meeting with community groups for the past 2.5 months now. Community groups I didn't even know existed. And we're trying to build bridges as law enforcement around this county. I've been in different communities, different towns, and I think this law, I think it's very clear at this point that this law is divisive, and I would agree with you, and I'm not a legislator, and I'm trying to stay very apolitical, but I think at this point, I think it's needs to be taken a real hard look at to see about repealing this law.
I would totally agree, and it's my fervent hope that will happen. And I would suggest to anyone either here or watching that if you feel strongly about this, to speak out and let others know, particularly if they're in the legislature or they're in the county executive's office, let them know how you feel about this particular law. well, to be honest, any other law or any other matter. But this is something it's detrimental to our community. And it's not a good way for us to get on the map. And this law has made us show up on people's radar screens across the country. And that's not a good thing, not in this fashion. So, but thank you all. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. And I hope to be back in 2 to 4 weeks.
2020.
2020.
Anybody else with questions for Josh? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board during our open forum this evening? Hearing none, we will continue on.
Bill, I move that we approve the agenda.
And I would ask that you do so with the addition of the materials that we received from Fight for Brighton tonight. And I think also I'd like to make sure we have the PowerPoint that was presented by Gwen Inc. And if, Dan, you don't have hard copy, we'll make sure that we get you that hard copy.
With that amendment, yes.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Tonight, we have 3 public hearings. The first one relates to the proposed removal of trees located adjacent to 94 Hollywood Avenue, 1139 Highland Avenue, and 45 Greenaway Road. This is a public hearing under the town's tree law. Dan, has the legal notice for this public hearing been given?
Trees, yes, Supervisor, it was noticed in the November 28th edition of the Brighton Pittsburgh Post.
As well as communications to surrounding...
That is correct, Supervisor. The surrounding residents were notified.
Great, thank you very much. And in fact, we've heard from a couple of those property owners. Notice having been given, I declare this public hearing to be open. Mike, do you want to talk about this at all?
These are large trees. Their diameters are greater than 30 inches, making them significant trees, hence the need to have a public hearing. They have been reviewed by the Tree Council, the Town Tree Council, the Public Works Committee. Both agreed that the removal of these trees is necessary. There will be trees planted in their place. That's pretty much it, Bill.
All right. And you have the list of the trees as well as tree hazard evaluation forms for each tree demonstrating the various reasons that we believe it's necessary. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board on this matter? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing to be closed, and you have a resolution to authorize the removal of these trees, if that's your intention. Robin, can I have a motion, please?
Sure. On the matter of the proposed removal of trees at 94 Hollywood Avenue, 1139 Highland Avenue, and 45 Greenaway Road for December 11, 2019, I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
And I would note, as you see in your agenda, that we have received correspondence from the one of the property owners at 1139, which is one of the houses adjacent to the tree, and one from a neighbor across the street from the tree at 45 Greenaway Road. Mr. James Moore at 52 Greenaway Road wrote in support of that tree removal.
And Bill, with respect to the request from the resident at opposite Greenway there, he's asked if we could make the firewood available to him. Is that something we can do, Mike? He heats his home with firewood.
It's difficult to do that only because my thought is it would be considered a gift. So us providing that firewood to a private residence would be considered a gift. It's something the town cannot do.
Unfortunate.
And I see both the town attorney and our finance director nodding their heads.
We would have to declare it a surplus and go through a bid process so that all residents would fairly have the opportunity to bid on an award.
Unfortunately, so instead we'll transport them off to the town dump and have them recycled.
Yeah, they'll be chipped. Yeah, they'll be chipped at our landfill and mulched.
Available as mulch to all town residents.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Christine, if you could, well, hang on, let me just describe here. This is, the next public hearing relates to the proposed traffic control device local law of 2019. This law would involve the installation of a stop sign southbound on Shaftesbury Road at Clover Street and a yield sign westbound on Edgevale Road, also at Clover Street. And this is all part of a rather complex intersection in East Brighton, Shaftesbury, Clover, Edgevale, several streets that all come in there. There's a pocket park sort of area there, and right in the center of one of our lovely neighborhoods. And so based on some feedback we got a couple meetings ago, this and frankly the next public hearing relate to some efforts to improve traffic safety there. So now let me just ask, Dan, has the necessary legal notice been given in this matter?
Yes, Supervisor, this was also noticed in the November 28th edition of the Brighton Pittsburgh Post.
Great. Then I declare this public hearing to be open. Is there anyone here who would like to comment on the proposed traffic control device local law of 2019? Mike, anything you want to say on this one?
We had met with a resident that lives on Shaftesbury, and she pointed out that when they leave Shaftesbury entering onto Clover Street, that it's confusing. And the southbound traffic on Shaftesbury would continue straight across, and it was very uncertain as to who had the right-of-way. The intent of the stop sign and the yield sign is to better identify that right-of-way and to make it a safer and more clear intersection.
Good. Any other comments? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing to be closed, and now I will turn to you, Christine, and ask if you would make the motion.
On the matter of the proposed traffic control device local law of 2019 for the installation of a stop sign on the southbound Shaftesbury Road at Clover Street and yield sign on the westbound lane of Edgevale Road at Clover Street, I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second. And Bill, this is another example of the sort of things that we can take in hand and when residents alert us to a problem.
Yes, it is.
Thank you for bringing that forward.
Yep. And again, really this and the next one, which all spun out of the same initial presentation. Okay, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. And finally, our third public hearing tonight relates to the proposed Browncroft subdivision speed limit reduction local law of 2019. And you have that proposed law. Dan, has the necessary legal notice been given for this public hearing?
Yes, Supervisor, as with the others, the notice for this was in the November 28th edition of the Brighton Pittsburgh Post.
Thank you. With that, I declare this public hearing to be open. You will notice that there is a long list of streets or segments of streets on Clover, Shaftesbury, Fieldstone, Corwin, Windermere, Brookwood, Coniston, Edgevale, and Tottingham. And in each case, the speed limit will be reduced from the town-wide sort of default speed limit of 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. And as we've discussed in the past, that is the lowest speed limit that we can go other than in a specific school speed limit zone, or it's a hazard speed limit when there's a sharp turn or something of that sort. We have to do it street by street because there is no authority to do it community-wide or even neighborhood-wide. Anything I missed there, Mike?
No, I think you covered it all.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this matter? Anybody on the board? The public hearing is open. Hearing none, I declare this public hearing on the Browncroft subdivision speed limit reduction local law to be closed. And I would ask again, Christine, for a motion.
On the matter of the proposed Browncroft subdivision speed limit reduction local law of 2019 for speed limit reductions in the Browncroft subdivision, bounded by Blossom Road to the south and Browncroft Boulevard to the north, from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour, I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
Discussion. Again, this is a matter that we've discussed previously, I think, both at our Public Safety and Public Works Committee meetings, certainly at the Public Safety.
Both,
and
yes.
got input from the Police Department, got input from Public Works, so. We have a motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. And with that, our public hearings are closed this evening. Next is communications. With the addition of the material that we received from Fight for Brighton tonight and the addition of the material from Gwen, Inc., can I have a motion to receive and file our communications?
So moved.
Second.
We've already talked about both the Fight for Brighton and Gwen, Inc. We've also talked about the first item here. This is a letter written by 7 lawyers, signed by 7 lawyers, which incorporates, sort of in the style of a legal brief, a critique, both a legal critique and a policy critique of the Monroe County annoyance law that we were discussing earlier. If you haven't had a chance to read it, I encourage you to do so. Although it's somewhat technical in nature, it is pretty approachable, I think, lawyer or non-lawyer.
It's pretty exhaustive. The fact that this law has even been proposed is absurd.
It's pretty damning,
And
particularly if you read the cases.
it's exactly on point. This sort of law has been struck down many times. And it's embarrassing that our county passed it.
And then finally, a letter from a resident thanking the Highway Department for their hard work collecting leaves. This is a gentleman who actually approached me, told me how much, described how the Highway Department folks had helped him as he was getting his leaves out to be picked up, and wanted to send along. He had already sent the email to you, wanted to let me know that he had sent the email to you, and wanted to express to you and to the community how much he appreciated the work of our Highway Department workers. I'll be talking a little bit more about that effort and their work a little later in the evening. But we have a motion and a second to receive and file the communications. Any further comments? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Committee reports. Our Community Services Committee. Robin?
Thanks, Bill. The Community Services Committee has not intervened has not met in the intervening timeframe since the last town board meeting. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, December 18th, 2019, at 9:30 a.m. at the Brookside Recreation Center, 220 Idlewood Road. As always, members of the public are welcome to attend.
Thank you. Finance. Jason?
Yes, Bill, the Finance and Administrative Services Committee met last Tuesday, December 3rd. Each of the items we discussed in committee appear on tonight's agenda. Our next meeting, so our regularly scheduled meeting would have been December 17th. However, because we don't have a town board meeting on December 25th for obvious reasons, that meeting has been canceled. So our next meeting will be on Thursday, January 2nd. We will meet either at 1 o'clock p.m. or immediately following our town board organizational meeting, which will occur at noon that day. So depending on how long that goes over, we'll be meeting right after in the Stage Conference Room here at Town Hall, and the public is invited to attend.
Thank you, Jason. Christine, Public Safety?
Public Safety. Public Safety met yesterday morning here in Town Hall. It is the first meeting of the Public Safety Committee since the tragic events on Edgewood Avenue, and was an emotional start to the regular monthly work of that committee, because we do bring together the ambulance, the firefighters, and the police department. And I can't express enough gratitude and admiration and compassion for all of the first responders who pick up and go about their regular business, even in the aftermath of such a difficult circumstance. That said, they dug right into the work of the committee. Brighton Ambulance reported that there have been approximately 5,951 calls to date in 2019, with 525 calls in November. They reported 98% coverage, meaning that they handled all 98% of the calls that came in Brighton without outside assistance. They have a new ambulance in service now with throwback graphics. You'll see that around town. It's a modified paint scheme to celebrate the Brighton Ambulance's 35th anniversary, which will come up in 2021. So they're already getting in the spirit of celebration. Brighton Fire Department reports 2,134 calls for service to date in 2019, and that is a decrease of 191 calls over 2018. Less business for the fire department is good news for all of us. Department of Public Works noted that snow plowing and leaf collection continues practically simultaneously, and we are grateful for the hard work that the crews are doing, keeping our streets cleared and our curbs cleared of snow and leaves. Brighton Police report over 52,000 calls for service to date in 2019. Given the workload, they are training 2 new hires who have, Chief, remind me, they have graduated from the academy already?
Yeah, they've graduated. They got about another month of field training before they're on their own.
And so we will soon see 2 new faces about town policing in the community. BPD also continues with traffic enforcement, increased focus on traffic enforcement with a car dedicated to monitor and enforce vehicles exceeding speed limit, especially along Elmwood Avenue. You probably see the cars pulled over in the mornings as a reminder to maintain appropriate speed there. That officer is currently averaging about 100 tickets per month. Rochester Fire Department, which serves West Brighton, recently delivery of 2 new aerial ladder trucks, which puts 6 trucks in service within the city of Rochester, and all of those are available to West Brighton services. They have a recruit firefighter class notification letter in preparation. So there is career opportunity in the Rochester Fire Department. And Town Council noted that the Brighton Fire District Commissioner elections were held yesterday, and I hope that many in the community got out to make their vote for Commissioner of the Brighton Fire District. The committee also covered traffic safety on South Winton Road at the Brighton High School bus loop exit. Commissioner Guyon reports that 2 parking spaces will be eliminated along Winton Road South to create a better sight distance and safer turning for cars exiting that loop. A letter will be drafted to the Monroe County DOT detailing the request and the proposed additional signage. There was a concern about gas odors on Willard Avenue related to a geothermal well. Some inquiries have still been coming in about safety from area residents. That well will be capped soon by the contractor, which should eliminate any lingering methane gas escaping into the air. And we will continue to review other municipalities' approach to regulations on geothermal drilling operations to mitigate public safety concerns as that becomes a more popular means for heating homes. Brighton Fire Department, Station Number 3, public meeting was held on November 21st to discuss the status of that fire station. It has been announced that that fire station will remain staffed by a professional firefighter and in operation for fire protection and emergency services going forward. There will be a pilot project to determine increasing staffing levels, and that will take place after the county 911 dispatch system is upgraded in the first quarter of 2020. Residents of St. John's Meadow attended the meeting and presented their concerns about traffic safety on Elmwood Avenue at David Avenue and Johns Arbor Drive intersection. There have been a number of left turn crashes at that intersection, both leaving the community or turning into the St. John's Meadows community. The residents are taking it under their own hands to survey their community about concerns, to document that. That documentation will assist the town in addressing a letter to the county DOT asking for a traffic study and for feasibility of a traffic light installation, which would be the financial responsibility of St. John's Meadows, but the county needs to be involved because we have the intersection of a private road, the town road, David Avenue, and Elmwood Avenue. And last, there was community interest in possibly establishing a safe exchange zone on the town hall campus in front of the police station based on a similar setup in another community. And after brief discussion, recognizing the interest in being safe when making those exchanges that begin online, say Craigslist or other online sales forums. They begin online, but have to be transacted in person between strangers. It was determined that we benefit from a safe community throughout. We benefit from community policing. We don't want to create any false sense of fear or concern in the community for anyone's safety. And we also don't want to increase the need for video monitoring and staffing, which could not, that isn't possible at this time and not warranted. So there are many safe public locations in the town of Brighton for such merchandise exchanges, and they've been successful in the past. There is no trend or concern about safety in that respect. That was all that we covered at the meeting. The next meeting will be Tuesday, January 14th, in 2020 at 8 a.m. downstairs.
Thanks, Christine. And on that last point, I do want to add, while we do have surveillance cameras that cover much of the exterior of the town hall campus, there's no guarantee that they are actively being monitored 24/7. Therefore, you get into a legal concept relating to assuming a special duty, and we looked at all of the factors you considered, these factors, and really made a decision that it, while I understand, as you said, the interest in making sure that these transactions are conducted safely, that setting up a location here on campus was not advisable or practical at this time.
And not necessary. We
And not
are
necessary.
a safe community, and we are well supported by it.
You know, and we talked a little bit out, and I know the chief was going to look to see if he could identify some, safety tips that maybe other law enforcement agencies might have and get those up so that people do. If people have questions on, best practices if they're engaged in Craigslist transactions, that, they can learn a little bit about that. But thank you for that presentation. Finally, Public Works. Chris.
Yes, Bill. The Public Works Committee met on December the 3rd, and one of the first items we discussed at the open forum was the issue of safety there at St. John's Meadows, people entering and exiting from that development there. And the police department reported there are actually 67 accidents at that location since 2010.
Along that stretch of roadway.
Along that stretch of roadway. And it appears that one of the components there is speed on Elmwood Avenue, and that's something that the police are addressing quite aggressively. So please, folks, when you're driving down Elmwood Avenue, your speed is a problem. It's not that important that you get to work on time or get back from work. Do so safely. But we will follow up with the Department of Transportation, with the county, to see if we can't justify a light at that location. Also, people should take into account, and the folks that came in to your committee, or our committee yesterday, they acknowledge that they're older people, that their driving skills are not as good as they once were, perhaps. And it maybe is an area where you should take a little extra time and show a little extra caution at that location. And the folks were quite frank about it. I appreciated that. And a comment also about, Christine, your committee's discussion of the parking spots that were eliminated at the bus loop. That's another instance where a citizen, a resident, raised the issue, and actually it was Mr. Gordon's law partner, Deb Shaw, who made a comment about some safety concerns about exiting the high school there from the bus loop. And again, it directed our attention to something, and it's been raised, I understand, in the past, and then is addressed by the school district and the police department, and now it's been revised.
Also identified that there are a couple signs there that are so weathered as to be almost illegible. So that was another good catch.
It's good. But please, if you see something to be concerned about in town, just bring it to our attention and it'll be addressed. Also, I was interested in the discussion on the methane release and the geothermal drilling. It is not something should be of concern, other than it smells like gas. And if you smell gas, by all means, report it. But folks should not be concerned that there is methane being released as a result of people drilling their geothermal wells. It is not, does not create a dangerous condition. It's done out of doors, but you will smell it in your neighborhood. Am I right on this, Mike?
Yeah, that's what we...
Good, thanks. Well, back to my committee. Our committee, excuse me. Also, we had a discussion again of some islands of non-service by Greenlight, which is an internet service that has been connecting many neighborhoods in the town. And unfortunately, there are instances where small pockets of neighbors are not being connected, usually as a result of their not wishing to be or not having a high enough number at the time that the greater portion of the neighborhood was being connected. But it has left a number of islands, and it's of concern to us because a competing internet service is important, I think. It keeps overall costs down. Competition's a good thing. And we have been investigating what the process is for Greenlight generally to provide service and how we might remedy these small pockets of non-service. And we'll continue to look at that. We were a little disappointed in Greenlight's response to our inquiry. We had hoped that they would come back a second time, hopefully to address on Roby Drive as an example. They sent us an email essentially saying, well, they were largely focused on larger numbers of customers they could hook up rather than the small islands, but we're going to continue to press them to see if we can't get them to provide service there. We also had a discussion of the intersection at Ashbourne and Hillside and that is not the Virginia Colony. There's
Sort of the border
sort of the
between
border
Virginia Colony and
and
Strathmore.
Ashbourne is within Virginia Colony, and the other neighborhood there as well, Judy, is... No, that's mine, Struckmar. The other side, McFarland Farms. They're all engaged there, that's where they all meet there. And a resident asked about perhaps changing the signage there. It's being looked at to make certain that the signs have been properly located there at the curve where Hillside turns into Ashbourne. But at this point, there are 2 stop signs, or 3 stop signs.
There's existing stop signs there. There's nothing new been put in there. The question was, the one stop sign is very far away from, well, it's not very far, but it's a distance away from the intersection. And should it be moved up closer?
But it's also at a point on the curve where you're going to see it, rather than around the curve where you're not going to see it until you get around the corner.
No, you're absolutely right. So we just have to take a look at it.
There was some discussion whether or not it made sense to move anything there, but Mike's department is taking a look at it. But also, we note that that intersection is slated for reconstruction in 2020, assuming we do have the money in the budget. We also talked about...
Right now, we do.
For now, we do, yes. We also had some discussion about the review of the town code, which consists of 2 volumes. Volume 1 is the local laws, and Volume 2 is the comprehensive development regulations. And we have continually looked at technical amendments to Volume 2, but we intend to continue that review to make sure that it is representative of the Envision Brighton Comprehensive Plan and the Complete Streets concept. We looked at the 2020 meeting schedule, and we also discussed the electric vehicle charging station, as Everett Garcia in our town engineering department raised the issue of potential of getting a Charge Ready New York grant to allow us to obtain more EV charging stations. They would be, however, of the pay type. The ones we have right now on Town Hall campus are free to be hooked up at, but if we're going to have more stations, it's going to be a continued load, an additional load on the community's electric bill. And so we're going to do a bit of an inventory of the public locations where sufficient power is available, and look perhaps to install additional charging stations through the use of that grant, which Mr. Garcia is going to pursue. Our next meeting will be January 7th at 9:00 a.m., and the public is invited to attend.
Thanks very much. Chris? Moving to new business. Jason, reading and approval of claims.
Yes, Bill, earlier this evening, I reviewed claims totaling $2,549,107.30. Notable claims include to the New York State Retirement System in the amount of $2,028,856, representing the employer's share of mandated retirement contributions for the general and the police employees. Also to Beam Mac Sales and Service Incorporated in the amount of $241,654.93 for the purchase of 1 plow/dump truck number 60 as per the 2018 CIP. Also to the Monroe County Library System in the amount of $27,450, representing the system cost share for the July through December 2019 period. Also to Exxon Enterprise Incorporated in the amount of $10,224 for the police body camera program per contract, which is a multi-year project. And finally, to Plant Concepts Incorporated in the amount of $11,050, representing GIGP Monroe Avenue maintenance work and fall cleanup at the town hall. The claims all appear to be in order, and I move that they be approved.
Second?
Discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Christine?
On the matter seeking to authorize the supervisor to execute a renewal agreement with Brighton Volunteer Ambulance Incorporated for 1 year from January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, in an amount not to exceed $310,000. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
This will be no change from the previous year. Can I have all right, any discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFonzi?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Jason?
Yes, the next matter seeks to authorize the supervisor to execute an agreement with the New York State Municipal Workers' Compensation Alliance for 2 years, from January 1, 2020 through December 31, 2021, in an amount not to exceed $414,362, plus any New York State assessment fees. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second?
This, we looked at proposals for 1 year and for 2 years. The opportunity to lock in this pricing for 2 years at an average cost that will be less than our current year's premium was an option that made a lot of sense for us. So that was the approach that was recommended by the Finance Committee, and that's the approach that we have here with us in this proposed resolution. Further comments? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFonzi?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Chris?
Next item is to authorize a budget transfer in the amount of $22,500 from the Public Works Department's Highway Road Repair Road Materials account, $5,500, and Highway Machinery Diesel Fuel account, $17,000, to the Highway Snow and Ice Control Salt and Abrasives account for the purchase of additional road salt for the balance of the year 2019. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
And we're going to be buying additional road salt, and I saw some data today. We are so far, and it's early, but even before the snow we got today, we've already had about 30 inches of snow this winter, more than double the normal for this season. We're not winter yet, but for so early in the season. So we're using a lot of salt. And so I get it. We're going to buy more. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFonzi?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Why don't you do the next one too, Christine? Chris. I do that at least once every meeting.
Next item is to authorize a budget transfer of up to $45,000 from the Public Works Department's Highway Equipment account to the Building Improvements account to fund the replacement of the highway garage lighting with LED fixtures. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
Got you in there somewhere. And obviously, we anticipate, although this will have a cost, and you'll see in the materials attached the itemized listing of the proposal. Yes, there's a cost that could be as much as $45,000, but we obviously expect through the use of the LED lighting, one, to save significantly on electricity costs, and two, that the lighting fixtures themselves will be longer life.
Supervisor, also, we have received an email from the vendor. They will hold that price.
Good.
So,
Good. All right. Well, then we have that motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFonzi?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. And Robin?
On the matter of accepting donations in a total amount of $4,000 from 5 Star Improvements, $1,000. Rochester Football Club, $700. Rochester Regional Health, $600. Flow Management Company, $600. Canandaigua National Bank, $300. Paris Kerwin Associates, $300. Seeger Sortino Law, $300. and Mr. James Sloan, $200 for 2019 special events. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
And these all relate to the 4th of July, except the final one, which relates to the annual Pearl Harbor Day luncheon for veterans that we just held on Friday. We have a motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Matters of the supervisor, while I'm talking about the Veterans Day, a Veterans Lunch held on or about Pearl Harbor Day every year. What a wonderful event. And this was the 15th year that Rich Wagner and his wife, Deb, Rich is one of our parks foremen, Deb works at the VA clinic. They've been putting this event on, and it is a glorious luncheon. We fill that Carmen Clark Lodge at Town Park with an awful lot of veterans. You look at their hats, you look at the service, Korea, Vietnam. We don't see many World War II anymore, but certainly 15 years ago when it started, there were a lot of them. But their stories and their service is extraordinary, and I really appreciate the work that our staff does, starting with Rich and Deb. We presented them with a proclamation honoring them for doing this for 15 years. We have retired employees who come back to work for this. It's such a beloved event. So thank you, everybody that makes it possible. Before tonight's meeting, I was at the holiday party of the Brighton Chamber of Commerce. You'll recall at our last meeting, we had a proclamation recognizing what was then the upcoming Small Business Saturday, and that's great to remember to shop small on, that Thanksgiving weekend, 2 days after Thanksgiving Day. But it's a great message anytime during the holiday season and any time, period. We have shops up and down the avenue that have unique offerings. We have restaurants of different price points and ethnic backgrounds. Really, Small Business Saturday is every day in Brighton, and the Chamber of Commerce is an important part of that partnership. So I do want to encourage everybody in the community that drives down Monroe Avenue, that drives down West Henrietta Road, or stops into the Tops Plaza, and maybe you have a shop that you've been going to. You go to Tops Plaza for one reason. You've never checked out some of the other shops there, or you see a place on Monroe Avenue. Check it out. This is a time of year. Go in, look for a gift. Stop and have lunch at a restaurant that you haven't been at. Support Brighton. These business owners support you. They support the community. And you never know what you might find. So, and then finally, as I mentioned earlier, I am going to talk about leaves again. Not so much, you've heard me week after week after week talking about don't put your leaves in the street. The only thing you're going to rake up tonight is white and fluffy. But what I do want to talk about really is this has been an extraordinarily tough year. A month ago today, on November 11th, a snowstorm started that we ultimately got nearly 18 inches of snow from. Obviously, for a couple days, our crews were plowing and salting. They weren't picking up leaves. After 18 inches of snow, did they sort of just, twiddle their thumbs? No. They actually were back out on the street, literally having to sort of poke and prod at side of the road to identify whether those were just snowbanks or leaf piles. But they've been out working, and today and yesterday are both great examples. They were out picking up leaves, and then weather conditions changed, and it snowed, and yesterday the temperature plummeted. So you had a black ice situation, and snow started to fall. So they're out picking up leaves, and then they started salting after that. We haven't let a little snow or a lot of snow stop us yet, and we're not going to. Our crews are going to continue out working. They've been working overtime on Saturdays. They are going to continue to work. We know there are a lot of leaves out there that still need to be picked up. The crews are just about finished in the East Brighton area, which is the end of our town-wide pass. We start in West Brighton and work our way eastward. So they'll be returning to West Brighton within the next couple days, and they're going to keep working. As I said, we know there's a lot of leaf piles. It's nice when it thaws a little bit and you can see them again, as it did yesterday until it started snowing again. This year, literally this last month, if they're out, the productivity is tough. We've had some conversations earlier this season with a gentleman who objectively, and I don't disagree with him, it's good to have some metrics, but it's one thing to say, here's how long it takes to pick up leaves on a block when it's 60 degrees. It's another thing when those leaves are frozen, when it's 25 degrees, when they may be buried under a snow pile. It will take longer. That work is hard work. I got to admit, and I was really appreciative to see some others on this social media thread take strenuous issue with someone who suggested that maybe some of our highway workers or even other government workers suggest that they don't work very hard. I call on you, follow them around someday. Not really, but if you watch them, you see them out on the street. They're working hard, and on days like today, I know about you, I don't want to spend 8 hours out in the cold and the wind on a day like today. That's what they do, and that's what they're going to keep doing. Past Christmas if they have to, as long as the weather conditions will allow them to. As I said, we know there's a lot of leaves to be picked up. We've heard, for example, a couple of streets where there's some question as to whether there may have been some piles that weren't picked up. Some of that probably is because it was a little hard to tell whether there were leaves in the snowy conditions. But I do want to assure the community, and I know Mike and really everybody that works on our highway department would say the same thing. We're going to be out there picking up leaves. Our crews are going to be out there picking up leaves, and we're going to get absolutely as much as we possibly can while the weather allows us to. And so you'll see those trucks, give them a wave, give them a thank you. They'll appreciate it. Anything else, Mike?
Bill, you said it very well.
Thanks. They work very well. That's everything I have. Matters of the attorney to the town.
I don't have anything this evening, thank you.
Matters of the town clerk.
Just briefly, since we won't be back this year, just want to wish everybody happy holidays and a happy new year.
And taxes, though, are going to be payable again. Let's talk about the end of the year.
He went there. Let's point that out. Yeah, I'm still waiting to find out some information from the county for exactly, but I'll expect that we will begin collection. Every year there's one day in the calendar year, at the end of the calendar year, where folks can prepay for the taxes. I expect that to be the 31st. But again, have not heard officially yet from the county when that'll take place. That is the expectation, and probably the way the calendar falls this year, I'm not expecting to know any numbers probably until after Christmas. So we'll get up on the website. We've got a form you can sign up for a mailing list, email or text notification when the bills are available. So if you go to the town clerk's webpage on our site, and the particular URL escapes me at the moment, but I'll reopen it in a second. You can opt in for that. You'll just get a quick text or an email saying, hey, the bills are available. Go check them out at the website. And townofbrighton.org/taxinfo is that page. But I think that's about it.
Thanks, Dan. Matters of the town board.
I have a few rec announcements. With the year coming to an end and a particularly long winter break from our schools, there are plenty of opportunities for fun over the December break with Brighton Recreation. You can keep your kids busy while you head back to work with Brighton's Rec's December Recess Camp. We also have a field trip camp or programs at Rock Ventures. We have programming available for all of the days off, and full details can be found online at www.townofbrighton.org/rec. Our winter-spring brochures from the rec department, we're very excited, will be out to homes and available online sometime in the upcoming weeks. Registration for Brighton residents begins on Tuesday, January 7th, and non-resident registration begins on January 14th. So do be sure you check out all of our offerings. And we have transitioned from outdoors to indoors for our Brighton Farmers Market. So you can join us at the Brighton Farmers Market every Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. is our winter time in the Brookside Recreation Center at 220 Idlewood Road. We're excited for another really exciting indoor season. I wanted to note that our Brighton Senior Rides, this is a partnership with Lifespan, is in need of volunteers. So if you do know anyone who would be willing to drive for Brighton a couple of times a month, the drivers are really appreciated by the folks who rely on Brighton Senior Rides to get where they need to go. Lifespan's Brighton Senior Rides volunteer transportation program helps our seniors in need of rides to medical appointments or religious services or to our area recreation centers. So if you do know of anyone, please call the Brighton at 585-340-8674 for more information on volunteering. And I do want to highlight just one more Brighton Recreation event. That is our Cabin Fever event at the Brighton Winters Farmer Market. It's on Sunday, January 26th from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Brookside Recreation Center. It is free, no registration is required, but you can join us for an afternoon of shopping and fun. Direct sales vendors will be on hand with items for sale. Brighton Wardrobe will be open and having a sale at that time. And of course, the Brighton Farmers Market will be in session. And the Brighton Recreation Department will be on hand and open for business. So we hope you'll stop over. So that's all my announcements.
Thanks, Robin. One other thing that I meant to mention, a number of you had the opportunity to attend one of the 3 community choice aggregation information meetings that we've held over the past few weeks to learn about our planned new energy purchase program that will enable residents and small businesses to acquire, to use 100% renewable source electricity on an attractive cost basis, on a fixed basis that will be lower than the average existing price over the past 12 months is the objective. But really more importantly, to move the needle on sustainability here in Brighton, to make sustainable electricity the norm. And we had those 3 meetings. I don't want anybody to think that that's sort of the end of the process, because over the next several months, as we look to actually go live and implement community choice aggregation in Brighton in 2020, there will be a lot more public outreach and public information about how this program, which is a program that's conducted in accordance with rules adopted by the State Public Service Commission, will work for you and your special circumstances, but more importantly, how it will really be a giant step forward in making Brighton a more sustainable community. So thanks to everybody that came out to the 3 meetings we have, and we're looking forward to a whole lot more information about community choice aggregation going forward.
And Bill, on that issue of sustainability, just did a quick scan of the change over to LED lights there in the Highway Department garage. The total is over 300 tubes and fixtures that are being changed out there. That's a significant change of equipment and a move to LED lighting, which I think is going to have a significant impact on our carbon footprint and sustainability. I'm very pleased to see it.
And for anybody that knows the highway barn, it's not as easy, even for a guy my size, it's not as easy as just reaching up
bulbs,
and screwing them in. We don't call it a barn for nothing. It's going to take some work to get up into some of those areas, to get those fixtures in. And we'll find out how many highway superintendents it takes to screw in a light bulb, maybe.
The tubes, Bill, not bulbs.
Tubes, right. Anything else? Then for what I expect will be the last time, it's certainly at least the last regularly scheduled meeting of the year 2020, I do note that our next town board meeting will be our annual organizational meeting. And it will take place on January 2nd, Thursday, January 2nd, 2020. Although we say here at noon, it will actually follow immediately after the swearing-in ceremony for elected officials who were elected or re-elected this past November. And so we're going to have 1, 2, 3 that day. We're going to have that swearing-in ceremony at noon, immediately followed by our organization town board meeting, immediately followed by our finance committee meeting. So if you're looking for some fun, you know, if your New Year's isn't exciting enough, we promise you lots of fireworks right here at Town Hall on the 2nd. And can I have a motion then for the last time in 2019 to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeBonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Thank you to our interpreters. We stand adjourned.